Good hilarity and opinion with Jamie, Simon and Hutch. The Newcastle Comparison, live weekly on NUFC Talk Radio, on YouTube and in all your listening platforms. NUFC Talk Radio, the voice of the Toon Army.
Oh, hi there. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the Newcastle Comparison here on NUFC Talk TV / radio. It's with me, Jamie Smith, and my friend Hutch there, the miserable Mark. How's it going there, Hutch?
I'm always miserable, mate. You know that.
Well, first of all, who's fitted you up with a background? How's people going to know that I'm in charge around here if you have backgrounds as well?
Well, that's actually a picture that I took while at St James's Park, and
You own the copyright, do you? So
I do. That is mine, and therefore you can't take it away from me.
Well, so do you want me to get a message to Chris that he owes you 10% for that then?
Definitely.
I'm sure you'll pick that one up. We sit here then at the end of an international fortnight. Welcome everybody. Hit the likes and subscribe, please, for us. It's normally the three of us here with our friend Simon, but Simon's not available. He's on holiday in Kent this week, apparently. Simon's just not available. Sorry, I got that one wrong. So it's just going to be the two of us. What we're going to do this week, we're going to spend a bit of time looking back at Eddie Howe's time at Newcastle United, as it was his 4th year anniversary just at the start of this international window. We'll talk a little bit about internationals, maybe if we get the chance, and then have a little bit of a look forward as to how Eddie Howe is going to go in the remainder of this season and beyond that. See what we think of that, Hutch. And I think probably a good place to start this, which I'm just going to spring this on you because you may not have seen it, but Eddie Howe earlier this week was initiated into the Newcastle United Hall of Fame. Did you see that?
I did, yes. I was doing the late night show with Chris and the Mighty Wayne earlier this week, and it was a topic of conversation.
Yeah, and I wasn't listening, so I should have known that.
Yes, you should. So I have seen that. Sorted out by the Newcastle United Federation. There were some. I mean, he deserves it.
I'm going to stop there. The Federation's a brewery. It was sorted out by the Newcastle Foundation.
That's the one.
That's a foundation. That's the charitable arm of Newcastle United. If anyone,
I'm sure you would prefer it to be the Federation.
Somebody might have just donated a load of money to the Fed brewery there, because if you've got a responsibility when you're live on the air, mate. So anyway, sorry, carry on.
No, that is basically all I was going to say. There were some new. Was Glenn Roeder also initiated at the same time, or was that?
I've no idea.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah. Anyone knows who else was initiated? John Anderson was.
John Anderson, the voice of Newcastle radio and former player, of course, legend. Maybe.
So yeah. Perhaps a little bit of a hint of his time at Radio Newcastle for John Anderson as well. But yeah, Glenn Roeder posthumously, of course, great player and manager, captain when I went my very first game. But Hutch, do you think it's deserved for Eddie Howe to be in the Hall of Fame?
70 years, no cup. Yes, it is. I mean, it's that simple. He brought us our first piece of silverware, whether you like it or whether you don't. Whether you like him or you don't, whether you think he deserves to be sacked or whether you're a happy clapper, you can't deny that he deserves to be in a Hall of Fame. Whether Newcastle United should be having a Hall of Fame, I think that's an entirely different argument. But yes, for a Newcastle United Hall of Fame, yes, he does deserve it.
Okay, we're 4 minutes in and I'm going to have to lose my rag with you. Now, you've just done something that people have been doing for the last sort of 6 months that beyond that really winds me up. The Fairs Cup is a major trophy. So when people say it's 70 years without a trophy, without the caveat that it's a domestic trophy, that's just plain wrong. It was 56 years without a trophy. But right. I still think you're right, though. It's an absolutely massive thing in Newcastle United's life. If you think in 1969 as a club, Newcastle United was 77 years old. I think someone will probably correct me if that's wrong. 77 years old. And we'd won, 12 trophies? And then to go 56 years, that's obviously by far and away the longest barren spell in the club's history. So to end that in itself is enough. But I think you've got to throw in his other achievements over time, and it's deserved. I think I do have one issue with it.
Go on then.
I don't know if you should induct people into this sort of thing while they're still doing the job, if you know what I mean. While
See,
he's still in the role, or if someone was still playing.
do you think it's been a bit political in the sense that we haven't started well? There has been some questions over his position by certain fans, certain people in the media, and as a consequence of that, it's kind of almost an indirect nod to that. Nah, he's still got the backing of the club.
I mean, I don't really know who makes the decisions for the Hall of Fame, but potentially. I'll tell you what I thought. I thought it was potentially they just knew he'd turn up for the ceremony while he still lives in Newcastle. Whereas,
Maybe.
2 years' time, if he's England manager or whatever, then it might be harder to get him there. That's probably the criteria, innit? I mean, Shola's in. The new Shola would come. But, the chances of them inducting, I don't know who's from far away, Mark Viduka, he probably wouldn't get in, would he?
No.
Give us half an hour and I'll think of someone who's really far away who should be inducted, right? And then we'll see if they get in. But I think overall we agree. It's been a great spell as manager. I was looking back over my life, right? Eddie, there's only two blokes in the past 30-something years of my life that have been in that job longer than Eddie Howe. Do you know who those two blokes are?
If you give me half an hour, I could probably get it, but that would be terrible radio, so just tell me.
Yeah, I'd like to apologise to anyone listening to this as a podcast for that long period of dead time. It's the obvious. It's Kevin Keegan and Bobby Robson. Keegan was about 6 weeks shy of 5 years, and Sir Bobby was, I think, just a matter of days shy of 5 years. And sorry, I'll come back to that, but just got Wazza's comment there. Hutch, mate, why do you look amidst of being beamed up? I think it's that light you've got there, Hutch, the one that's meant to youth you that you've been using.
I've still not got lighting quite right, despite buying one of those weird circular lights that goes on the top of my monitor. I just can't get it right.
Whatever you and the wife want, mate. But yes, Eddie Howe.
One day.
Looking back, 4 years and a couple of weeks since he took the role, since Jason Tyndall became our assistant manager. We had that draw at Brighton that he sat in the stands for. And then, if you remember, Hutch, he didn't make it to his first game because he had COVID. But a bit of an inauspicious start, because when he first took the job, it took us quite a while to get going, didn't it, if you remember? Looking back at that season, 21 to 22.
Well, yeah, Brentford's was next. We got a point, which took us up to a grand total of 6, which was on the 20th of November, according to my notes. And we stayed in single figures pretty much up until early December, and we didn't really kick on until, I think, the game that you always say basically changed that season and possibly his time at Newcastle, which was Leeds away. Was it Leeds away or Leeds at home?
It was away. I would say that changed the course of recent history. So I think we had one win after 19 games, and I went down to Elland Road, me and our mate Martin, and we didn't expect anything. I think we'd sort of started to think we were going to go down and have to come back up. And we won 1-0 with a free kick from John Joe Shelby that, to me, is one of the most important goals in Newcastle's recent history. And that kick-started a bit of a revival. And the game after that was a home game against Everton, Hutch, which we were all at, and I'm sure you'll remember that one.
Trippier. scored.
Trippier free
1-0.
kick past.
Yeah.
Well, it was 3-1, wasn't it? If can we go back? But Trippier scored the third, didn't he, past Jordan Pickford's little arms? That took us out of the relegation zone, and we never looked back into it.
So yeah, I'm thinking of the Aston Villa game, which was the next one where we won 1-0, and that was Trippier as well.
Yeah, I did see it, Everton, but yeah, we did win the next game as well through another Trippier free kick, and I think him coming in was the catalyst for that, wasn't it? What a massive, massive signing he's been.
12 million, apparently, if the rumours were to be believed at the time.
The first signing of not only the Eddie Howe era, but the entire new regime, and still in the team today. He's probably coming to the end of his time. I think that's fair. We'll touch on that towards the end. But what a signing he was. And it wasn't just what he gave as a player. He sort of changed the mentality of the team, didn't he? Came in as a leader and really sort of dragged them up to his level, coming from Atletico Madrid, where he'd won La Liga and playing for England and scoring in World Cup semi-finals. And he was a bit of a... We thought he was a statement signing of the month, but later that month, we signed Dan Burn and we signed Bruno. And I think that's potentially turned out to be the statement signing. Would you say?
I have to admit that when I was watching Sky Sports News, it was late in the transfer window, and we announced that we had signed Dan Burn. I didn't have a bloody clue who he was. And he's been absolutely... What were you going to say?
I just knew he was really tall. I think that was a big thing. Like, he was the tallest player in the Premier League. And they used to do an article whenever Brighton played about how Dan Burn was a Newcastle fan. But yeah, I wouldn't have known him. I wouldn't have known him if I'd walked past him in Eldon Square. When a year or two later, I actually did walk past him in Eldon Square, and I went running after him, squealing like a kid to get his photo taken with my son. But yeah, two great signings.
Fantastic signings. 13 million for Dan Burn, 35 for Bruno, which still looks like good money.
Like a steal, an absolute steal by today's rates, doesn't it? All three of them. And Dan Burn's obviously he's not a left back, is he? And he's had his moments this season, ups and downs, but been a fantastic player for us. And Bruno, an even more amazing player. Once we'd beaten Everton and Villa, we went on an amazing run that season. Anything else stand out for you as we got out of that relegation bother?
Well, there's the big one at the end where we beat Arsenal 2-0. But I think the main one, the other turning point really, and it was a turning point in this player's career at Newcastle United, was the Norwich 1-1, which was even earlier before Leeds, where Kieran Clark got sent off. And as a consequence of Kieran Clark getting sent off, Joe Linden changed positions into midfield and has become the mainstay of that trifecta. Now, in effect, again, like Kieran Trippier, he's kind of coming to the end of his usability, dare I say it. He's had lots of injuries, and you can kind of tell that those niggling injuries are still playing up on him. He's not being his usual self this season. But for 3 years, he's been a beast of a player for us.
Yeah. You could argue that he epitomises the change in the team, because he was dreadful in the Steve Bruce team. Turned around when Eddie Howe came in and has excelled. Like, it seems like when he's done well, when he's been playing well the last couple of years, the team's done well, going right through the cup final and everything.
It was earlier in this season that Joe Linton was playing as a striker under the Steve Bruce regime, and somehow he managed to kick the ball into his own face. And I recall seeing that and reading about it afterwards.
I've seen you do that in football matches, Hutch. Let's not.
I don't get paid thousands of pounds a week for it.
No one's asking you to disclose your salary. But anyway, I think there was some great games. I remember Bruno scoring an injury time winner against Leicester, that Arsenal game that you said there. And we ended up in the 11th place. We nearly came in the top half of the table. And from where we'd started under Bruce, that was a really amazing turnaround. There was a point, I think, where we thought we're going to have to go down and come back up here. But I just remember, probably to give a bit of context to before the takeover, before Eddie Howe came in, we would be going to games in the Mike Ashley era, and we had full-time jobs. We all had little kids, and it'd just be to go to the pub and see each other for a bit. And then the match would kind of spoil the day, wouldn't it? You'd go there, and the times we said, "Oh, we'll meet afterwards in such and such a bar for a drink," and the game would be so bad, you'd lose any mood for the drink, and you'd just storm off home.
Well, there was that. Was it the Leicester game where the TV fell off the side, and we thought it was brilliant because we got to spend another hour in the pub?
Yeah, and it did turn out to be a canny game, actually, that one, but it was the exception, not the rule back then. But then this was the rebirth of like going to the game being brilliant, and I think we kind of, there was a point where it didn't bother you too much if we were going to go down, because you knew we had hope for the future for coming back up. But when we came mid-table and did quite well, that hope transferred into what can we do in the Premier League next year with players like Bruno and Trippier and a revitalised Joe Linton. And we got to that summer. And I think this has been a theme throughout, although there's another test to come soon, that the signings that have been added, whether you give Eddie Howe full credit or partial credit, or you put that on the recruitment team, we've got a hell of a hit rate. Because, come on, Hutch, let's test your memory. Who did we sign then? Summer of 2022.
The summer.
4 permanent signings. Yeah, the summer.
Well, we signed Nick Pope, Sven Botman, The Rat, and Karius. Was it? Did we sign Karius on a free?
Well, yeah, we did sign Karius in the end as emergency cover. But the 4 I was getting at was Isaac, Pope, Botman, and Matt Targett. And people might not remember, but Matt Targett in that relegation fighting season was outstanding on loan. I think probably he's the one where you'd say we might have been better off just leaving him, because he barely played. We got Botman and Dan Burn became the left back.
I think that one, though, was very much a situation where we loaned him and we had an obligation to buy him if we weren't relegated. So
I don't know if that was the rules. I think you're just making up shit there.
I might be making up shit, but I'm almost positive that was the rule.
Right. Okay. Well, I can't be bothered to look that up, but someday I will. I'll look that up, and I'll look up someone who's really far away from Newcastle who should be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that'll be an in-your-face moment. But anyway, like, irrespective, I think Target was about 12 million, and over the next few years he played, I'd be surprised if he made 20 appearances between injuries and Burn and then the emergence of Lewis Hall. But another 3 amazing signings. Pope, who it seems like we're seeing it, like some of these players are maybe coming towards an end point. Pope's had some good moments, some bad moments this season, but he's been overall absolutely brilliant for us, and he especially was this season. Sven Botman, similar, especially was this season. We're hoping he's over the injuries that have hampered him since. And Alexander Isak, I think people have got to admit, Alexander Isak was quite a good player for us. Would you say?
I mean, he was, but that is why we are ultimately very annoyed by his actions this summer. So the least we talk about him, yeah. In fact, well, there's no need to talk about him really until we talk about last season, because obviously the beginning of that season, very much he was in and out of the team, wasn't he? He was in and out of the team with injuries, and also the way that Eddie Howe seems to work is that he doesn't like to integrate players until they've had some level of inclusion within the team. possibly Wiley works out where they should be, which is why there's this little discrepancy really with how Voldemort fits in. Because the idea was to bring Wisser in, basically as the Alexander Isak replacement, if you will, and then integrate Voldemort around a new style of tactics. But going back to that season, there were those signings. Gordon in the January as well. Gordon played really well for us the following season. Obviously, again, he was slowly integrated in the first part of that season. But
we'll come to that season in a bit, but because Gordon was sort of just a bit of a bonus addition, wasn't he? He was kind of getting out of the way of that integration period that you said that Howe always has, while we were having a pretty brilliant season, because I think we expected to do better after we avoided that relegation, after we signed those players. Did anybody really think we'd get in the Champions League?
No.
And
no one thought we were going to get in the Champions League. I mean, they thought they would do well.
I remember seeing something like from that Leeds game, from the turn of the year, we had top 5 form. And I remember saying if we could maintain that, you never know. And we sort of did, didn't we? Well, we did. We ended up 4th. We flirted with 3rd. And as a bit of a bonus, we got the League Cup final. So for clarity, first Cup final for 24 years since we reached the 99 FA Cup final. First League Cup final since 1976 and only our second ever. And our first trip to New Wembley. Now, we were there, Hutch, weren't we? And it didn't quite go according to plan.
We were there.
Let's just give that about 30 seconds, that cup final, without dwelling on it too much. But what do you think went wrong there?
I think that the team initially that we started was wrong. Isak was fit and Wilson played rather than Isak. I think had Isak played, we possibly would have done better. Murphy as well came off did Murphy come off the bench? I'm sure he did, and he was very lively in the second half. But it all started going wrong really in that Liverpool game when Nick Pope got sent off for running out and punching the ball, and we just didn't control it. We were kind of like on a bit of a slump towards that game because we were favourites. Man United were playing shockingly over Christmas, and then
they always are, aren't they? Yeah.
Then kind of like their form picked up at the right time, and I was dropped off at the wrong time. And even though we went in as favourites, their experience and that kind of thing helped. And Marcus Rashford seems to be a bit of a bane in our side. Obviously now he's in Barcelona, but he still managed to score 2 goals against us this season. So yeah, I mean, it was a good experience, but you kind of we left that game kind of feeling really deflated on the basis that it might not happen again for a long time. Obviously it did, not to spoil anything for anyone, but it was really like what had been a really great weekend turned into a really depressing end of it. And it did feel like one of those like Ashley games where the game ruined the weekend.
I think people probably do know that what happened next, Hutch, unless this ends up in a time capsule and it's used as the only source of evidence for what happened in Newcastle United at this point in time. In which case, stay tuned, future people. But yeah, I think, is it fair to say though that they learned from that? Because we went there, I think, and got overwhelmed by the occasion. We're happy to be there, fans and team. And then maybe they developed a bit of grit that helped see them through that season. And I think the first evidence of that is when Man United came to St. James. And you've got that evidence on the video where they really are sort of how he's really geeing them up in the changing room. And maybe I've seen a bit of a different side of him to what people would normally expect there. But they turned it round and they got that Champions League place with that stunning 0-0 draw with relegated Leicester.
Yeah, well, it's one thing that I was actually going to bring up because we beat Brighton in the game before 4-1, and we only needed that. We only needed that point, and it was kind of like one of those. It was almost a call. That Leicester game was almost a callback to that cup final because it was a really, really massive occasion, and they seemed to just freeze. And while we got the draw that we needed and got Champions League football, I do think looking back, that could have gone horribly wrong. I mean, we drew against Chelsea on the final day as well, which would have given us that point. But I mean, he massively changed his team for that as well. So maybe we would have got the win had he not.
So, yeah. So,
but yeah,
I know you are digging in for the worst case scenario that didn't happen in that situation. But yeah, brilliant. We got in the Champions League, and there was some great moments along the way, wasn't there? You've got to look at that. That beating Man United, Tottenham when we put 6 past them.
5 in 20 minutes. That was a great game of football.
And everything just seemed to come together a little bit, didn't it? Then I guess it was time to sort of capitalise again. And looking back, that summer, well, we got the main addition was Tonali, wasn't it? And what a signing that was. But other than him, it did feel a little bit, at the time, it felt a little bit underwhelming, didn't it? If you remember, as we prepared to get into the Champions League.
We signed Barnes, and I think we paid well over the top for him, like nearly 40 million. And we signed, but then, I mean, we signed Tino Livramento and we signed Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall on a loan. Yeah. I mean, at the time, those transfers kind of like thought, well, you're spending a lot on 2 young fullbacks, but we're now kind of sat here 2 years later waiting for them to come back because we've not been great without them. So again, the hit rate there, I mean, you can argue that Barnes proved his worth last season, and he did go on a bit of a goal scoring run, but again, I've never been convinced by him, ever.
I like Harvey Barnes. I think the question you've got there when they bought Harvey Barnes was, he plays in Anthony Gordon's position. We've just paid 45 million for Anthony Gordon, and that's fine having strength in those positions. But we were really, really up against it in terms of how many players we could sign, who we could sign, and doubling up in that position felt like a luxury we maybe couldn't afford. But
well,
I think
certainly the argument was at the time is that we were doubling up in that position with Anthony Gordon, who we'd spent 45 million on, Harvey Barnes, which we ended up pumping out 40 million for, and on the right wing we had Jacob Murphy, who has been brilliant for us, and we also had Miggy. And again, Miggy had his season that season, but everyone could kind of see it was a flash in the pan. He was never really consistent. So
I think we're going to have to elaborate that that's Miguel Almiron, because everyone's forgotten him now. Miguel Almiron, former right winger, who is currently playing for some American team again.
Big Daddy Win says, "You're the West Ender, Jamie." Yeah.
Big Daddy Win, that would be the mighty Win himself has been saying that. Well, West End, not exactly. I am in North Newcastle, but what Win's probably referring to is my son plays for Wester Hope United, and he's regularly out about at Wester Hope top, and we spend a lot of time up there. But I always lock my car when I'm there, though. So I'm only joking, folks. So yeah, I think that summer then, Hutch, looking back on it, those two signings, there was a lot of moaning about Hall and Livermore being maybe areas that we didn't need to go for because we had Trippier, we had Byrne playing well at left back, we had Target. But they turned out to be tremendous players who played a huge part in subsequent seasons. And are we kind of maybe in that position now with a couple of people? You know,
Potentially.
should we judge Jacob Ramsey? Should we see what happens when Wissa gets back?
Anthony Elanga hasn't had the best of starts, but you know, I do think that you could kind of judge a player far too quickly. I mean, you look at, for instance, Florian Thauvin, who we had on under Steve McLaren, and by the January he was already gone. But then a year later, he was he basically the top scorer in Serie A, or very close to it.
Thauvin.
Yeah.
Can you stop asking me questions that I have no clue about, please?
He did very well anyway. He got back into the French team. He had a really good end of his career. I'm almost sure that he's still playing, but you know,
Yeah,
he's got to be in his mid-30s by now.
he played and scored for them earlier this year, I think. It just time's donut shaped, isn't it? Surely he shouldn't still be playing for France. But overall, I think that summer you weren't too convinced about the reinforcements because Hall and Livermore were maybe one for the future.
I think the issue was that you could see that there was deficiencies within the squad. I mean, we were playing a very high pressing, attacking game, and you kind of worried about how that was going to translate when you were playing 2 games a season.
Yeah, 2 games a season.
2 games a week. Oh man!
We were operating as a heavyweight boxer this year, twice a season.
Twice a season. Just play Man United twice a season, we'll have a cracking time.
We actually played them 3 times that season, but you know, but yeah, I think it sort of came to fruition, didn't it? Because we started that season, people said we need a right winger, we need an extra centre half, whatever. But the injuries were off the scale, weren't they? And I mean, do you think? And we're talking about Howe's time here. Do you think the manager was at fault there because that season kind of
ebbed and flowed, didn't it?
Ebbed and flowed, didn't it? And there was some good moments. There were some great moments. We got to go to Dortmund. You went to Milan.
I did go to Milan.
And that was interesting for you, wasn't it? In fact, why don't you talk a little bit about what happened?
So the San Siro is basically in my list of stadiums that I wanted to visit. So these guys didn't want to. I did.
We'll stop, right? I wanted to go, but we had a chat and we said we'll go to Dortmund. And when you phoned me up like a week before, I said, "Oh, come on, let's go to Italy." And I was like, not sure. And I said, "Let's just go to Sheffield United instead." And we did. We got tickets for Sheffield United. And then you got a stupid flight back from Italy.
To Edinburgh.
Drove back from Edinburgh Airport in the middle of the night and totaled your car on the way back, didn't you?
That is the long and short of what happened, yeah.
That's what happened.
That is exactly what happened.
And then, so your wife had to pick you up with something like 3:30 in the morning from a motorway hard shoulder. And,
it wasn't. The problem was it wasn't on the motorway. So I followed Google Maps, which took me down like A66 and all the bloody roads because I live in Durham. If I'd lived in Newcastle, I would have been fine. But
saved, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'd moved to Durham by that point, and so as a consequence, just outside of Crook, totaled the car, which was 5 minutes away from my house. But I was
okay. That happened. And
that
then
happened.
So to rescue you from the road, and then when I came to pick you up on the Sunday to take you to Sheffield United.
Yeah, I totally forgot that. I totally forgot that I was going to Sheffield United, and slightly concussed. And so had a bit of a fight, and then got in the car and went to Sheffield United.
And bitched and moaned on all the way to Sheffield about, how wrong you were getting because you hadn't told your missus, already reeling from a totaled car and a 3 a.m. pickup, that you were pissing off to Sheffield immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
So I had that in me. At one point you said, "Oh, you'd better take me home," and I was like, "I'm not turning around." And so we got there, and you spent a lot of time on the phone saying, "I'm sorry, pet, I'm not in a discotheque." And we got to the ground, and what happened in that game again? What was the score?
It was 8-0.
8-0. It was Newcastle's
8-0.
biggest ever away win.
Yeah.
And there was an added element of that, wasn't there, David? Because you'd had the Thursday and Friday off work recovering from your crash with a bad back. So you're the greatest away games ever. And that's, again, getting back on theme, I think.
Just before you do, Jamie,
this
Wazza
time-
says, cheeky bugger thought Jamie was a bit of a posy name.
I say that to my mother all the time. I would like I'd like to be called Clint, I think. But
You wouldn't suit it.
I think I would if you're right.
No, you wouldn't.
But anyway, back on theme. I think this is something that over the last few years keeps happening where I've got all these great memories. We said about Leeds away, getting to Dortmund, and even something like that, going down to an inauspicious game against Sheffield United and there's a goal every 5 minutes. And that was a brilliant day. It's not just the big days. There's a little brilliant day all along. And like we said, in the past, we used to just go for the pub, for the crack and stuff. And now you go and the game lifts you right up.
Well,
It doesn't always happen. It hasn't happened so much lately. But it's something that I think Howe has given us back a lot that we didn't have for many years before that.
I mean, it's one of the things this season that our away form has been absolutely diabolical. And, I'm not trying to defend anything when I say this, but when we used to go away in the Mike Ashley eras, we never used to go away for the game. We used to go away like the night before. We used to get absolutely hammered. London was fantastic for it. We'd been to most of the major cities in the country doing this,
and some
and some proper shitholes as well. And we used to just have a good time, knowing full well that the game would be crap. But then we could go away to somewhere like Sheffield United and win 8-0 with a concussion and getting text from my boss. But, and I also got to go to Milan, even though it nearly killed me. And if I would absolutely recommend to anyone before they knock it down, which is going to happen in the next year or two, to get yourself over there because it is one of the best stadiums you will ever visit.
And I would recommend, if you do go, pay a bit extra for a flight that gets you in at a reasonable time.
And into a place that you actually want to go to. So don't fly to Edinburgh, fly to Newcastle.
So it started quite well, and we had, but then things even started happening that day, Hutch, because that was the day Harvey Barnes broke his foot at Sheffield, and he didn't play much of a part in the months ahead. Isaac was out for a bit. Botman did his ACL. And I think they told him to run it off, didn't they?
It wouldn't surprise me.
And we lost him for a long time. And Joe Linton was out for a bit, and obviously Wilson. And we went through that stage where he pretty much had 11 players. Now, that season we ended up 7th. We got 2 cup quarterfinals. We gave the Champions League a go, but we had a horrific draw. Milan, Dortmund, and Paris.
But we came so close as well. Like in the away game against Milan, the one that I went to, we hit the crossbar right at the end. We pumped Paris at home. We should have got something away because the referee just robbed us. And both Dortmund games were really quite close.
Mm.
Well,
the rain ruined the home game, didn't it? It just took it down and couldn't play football. We haven't even mentioned beating PSG 4-1, which was a game that a lot of people enjoyed. But that's another like amazing night under the lights. First game in the Champions League for many years, and there was loads of moments like that. But I think overall, that season did fall a little bit flat. There was moments where I think, to be fair, it felt like the team weren't getting up for it, like when they lost at Chelsea, when they lost at Man United, who were fighting for those Europa spots. And that was I would describe it as a mildly disappointing season in the end that had some terrific, tremendous moments. Is that harsh, or is the
No,
injury the reason?
it was a series. It was a season of moments because obviously we also, played the first weird time derby in however long. Beat Sunderland. Don't ask how it's going to go
Yes.
in a month's time. But yeah, you can pick out those games. You can pick out the away trips that we went on, but I think lessons have been lessons were learned from that going into the next season. Not in terms of the transfers that we made, because we were kind of hamstrung. So we brought Kelly in on a free,
Yeah.
Woody in on a free, and we
If you can
we
even
actually
count him.
we actually spent money on a Sula who never played.
Mm-hmm. And he played a little bit, didn't he? And I think that was a great PSR situation. Now, that's been the other element, I think, with Eddie Howe. We'll come to PSR a little bit when we're talking about the future. But we had to sell Elliot Anderson, who apparently
Yeah.
Nottingham Forest now value at £100 million, which I hope is just silly talk. But
with Man United and Arsenal apparently interested.
yeah. And I mean, God, we've been done there, haven't we? If we've got Vlachodimos and 15 million quid in exchange for a player like that. But I still am adamant that he wouldn't have gotten the Newcastle team even now with the three midfielders that we've had since then. But we had to sell him. We had to sell Yankuba Minte, who scored about 6 times since against us. And both of those would be useful to have in our squad, I think, and both would have saved us a lot of money. The PSR situation, do you blame Eddie Howe for that at all? Or is this
No.
the whole boardroom mess, do you think?
I mean, some people think that Eddie Howe has too much control over our transfer policy, but at the end of the day, that is primarily because we seem to go through directors of football like it's going out of fashion. Now, you can argue that Eddie Howe hasn't agreed with any of these people, and as a consequence, they've just basically quit on like principle. But at the same time, you've brought in a manager who you've kind of like put your money behind. So you want to bring in someone who is going to be, is going to be reasonably compliant with that person. Now, Paul Mitchell absolutely screwed us at the beginning of this summer. And, who's the other guy again? I've completely forgotten what his name was.
Dan Ashworth.
That's the one. He just wanted to go to Man United. He was offered the chance to go to Man United. He went to Man United. And then he was made like an absolute idiot when he actually suggested that Eddie Howe should be a contender for the job for Manchester United. And they went and signed Amarin. Now, he's doing all right this season, but he spent the vast majority of last season basically telling all the fans that this was the worst Man United team in history. So I can't imagine Eddie Howe would have done that. I can imagine Eddie Howe would have gone in and made them run laps until they were physically exhausted, which is basically what he did when he came in here. But they would have been certainly prepared.
Amarim also sounds like Gru from Despicable Me.
Do you reckon?
If you ever hear him talk, yeah. I steal the moon. I sell Scott McTominay. Yeah, go on, just listen to a clip. It's scary. But yeah, we did have a lot of churn at boardroom level, and they kind of messed the PSR thing up. But you went into that season thinking, oh, well, we're probably a little bit undercooked here. But I'm going to put it out there, Hutch. That was the best season of my life. last season, 24-25. Would you
It was
agree, disagree?
pretty good, wasn't it? It was very good.
Are you not pinning yourself to that? Are you not saying that was the best season of your life? Did you like a season that was really miserable and upsetting, like 09-10 when there was protests and Zisco scoring against Hull and going down and getting beat off Sunderland and things like that?
I liked the COVID season because I just threw things on my TV from. It's just basically, angry, just pure angry.
This is if that's what makes you tick.
That is what. No. In terms of an overall season, it was the best season. Best season of my life, best season of your life, best season of the vast majority of our lives. I mean, we finished in the Champions League on the last day, which was lucky, but we'll take it. And winning the cup, we were obviously there again. Some good trips as well. The Arsenal trip away was fantastic.
Yeah.
On the run to the cup. I mean, just every single one of those cup games was brilliant. Like every single.
About the Wimbledon game, like.
Okay, that was miserable.
It's just 1-0 sheer penalty. That was a tough old night. And like you say, I tell you what though, last season fabulous moments, but it was a long old anxiety attack. I remember after that Arsenal game, which again, all of the top away trips for me in my life have come in the last few years. Sheffield United, Sunderland, Dortmund, and that Arsenal trip is right up there, winning the first leg 2-0. And we went to the pub in London and booked our ticket, booked the hotels and everything for the cup final, didn't we? And then we had it felt like forever for that second leg to come around, and we had like a 4-week anxiety attack thinking, they're going to turn it around, and that's bad enough in itself without losing 200 quid on trains and hotels.
Yeah.
But we got there.
Sorry, could I just comment on this? What was I do look a bit like Macaulay Culkin, which is why I usually wear glasses, but the blue kind of distracts. So, but it is Christmas and it is Macaulay Culkin's time of year. So, but I am not Home Alone.
I'm going to say it right. One of these Christmas games, I want you to come dressed as Kevin McAllister from Home Alone and run around the Gallagher and doing Home Alone things, like going down the steps on a sledge. Or,
leaving Christmas decorations and just icing it beforehand.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'd lose my season ticket for that, so no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, when they come to throw you out, just say you're doing a tribute to Home Alone. It's a bit of Christmas cheer for the kids.
Well, after some bloke has just like put his foot through a giant nail.
Yeah, that's my favourite bit. Yeah, you've got to do that bit.
It's just a tribute. It's fine.
So
Officer,
right, I've got that. I'm making a note of that. Chelsea at home. Make Hutch dress as Macaulay. We could all do it. We could do like a group thing. No, change your mind.
Just me.
So
you could go as the Wet Bandits. You and Simon.
That was what I was implying, but I'm not willing to do that.
All right.
Okay. So we've anyway. Where were we? We've got past Arsenal in the first leg. The second leg was amazing. I was out at about 3:00 in the morning that night.
Yeah, I was.
And next thing you know, well, it takes a while for Wembley to come around, and we had a little bit of a wobble in form. Went out the FA Cup. Standard Wembley suspension. Anthony Gordon this time, with a bit of a silly red card. And I think we went there knowing that Liverpool were
favourites,
the best team in the country, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it did turn a little bit like when we were losing at Anfield in the weeks before. You thought, is this just going to be a disaster? But best day, one of the best days of my life. I've got to be very careful because I have 3 kids and a wife, and they do they do hold a big place in my heart, of course. But but this game was just spectacular, and everything about it was an amazing weekend. Something we've always been thinking about. There's us there in Wembley for anyone on the YouTube version, and start to finish, just something I'll never forget. I think when we talked about Eddie going into the Hall of Fame and stuff like that, this in itself is enough for me. If I never see us win another trophy, I'll always have this moment.
I would just like to say, right, a message to London. When you have 50,000 Geordies who've just watched our team win a cup, don't close all your pubs at 10 o'clock at night, because the difficulty finding a place to actually celebrate that after that game was immense.
Yeah.
Like, did we end up like back at the hotel, just basically drinking cans?
Well, we did after a while. We found a few pubs, but like it was difficult getting away from Wembley again. We made the mistake of thinking there'd hardly be anyone on the way out. And I remember walking past the box park and I saw Dan Burns' dad. And I mean, Jesus, what a moment that must have been for him. Dan Burns' dad, a lot of people won't know this, but he's just part of the travelling Newcastle fans. He's been going for years. And he used to live next to my mate, so I know him a bit. And as we were walking down Wembley Way, I saw Dave Burns standing outside the box park. And I wanted to speak to him and say, Dave, like, wow, your son's just scored as Newcastle have won a cup. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to speak to him without bursting into tears. That's what it was like. I was like crying at half time. I was crying at full time. People were hugging each other. It was just one of the most amazing experiences. And I think it's something we've always got to look back on and never lose the joy of that moment, even though, you know, some of it's gone a little bit with the guy who scored the key goal creating a bit of a stir this summer, but it'll always be there, that moment. And I think you've got to be careful in a sense, because you don't want it to be over sentimental if this season continues to go down future seasons and think, well, Eddie Howe won us the League Cup. But you just cannot, I don't think you can downplay that achievement at all. We followed on from that and we had the Cup Day, the celebration as well, which I think was another great day. It was, I've got a little picture of that as well. Hang on. That's me and my boy Blake, and that's Eddie behind us when his picture came down at outside the Shark Bar when the bus went past. Another fantastic day for the city. And I know not everybody is from the city who supports Newcastle, but that's what it's about with English football, is a sense of civic pride. There's the fact that that club represents us and it's intrinsically linked to the city. And anyone who wants to be part of this club is always welcome, but they're welcome to the city as well. And to see the streets that day filled with so many people, and I had my wife with me, my daughter who doesn't even like football, and just everybody smiling, happy, having a fantastic time. And just to see the bus go past with a little glimpse of the cup. And I think it was overwhelming for the players as well on the moor with Anton Deck and stuff.
Yeah, we went straight to the moor on the basis that my little one's a bit funny with crowds. So we stood at the back, but yeah, we had a great time as well. Yeah, just like the whole event, like from start to finish, with obviously the bus parade that you guys saw. I saw it on the screen, but when they came, singing songs, just having a general laugh, and then at the end there was the drone show, which was just spectacular.
By Seller, of course.
By Seller, yeah. And then going off into town afterwards, just everyone was happy, everyone was out. Like every single pub, every single restaurant was full. It was great. It
was, yeah. It's just everything about it, really. Here's what was I said here. Best atmosphere ever. For me, Man United home, we got beat 1-0. Oh, it was Christmas. There was black and white Santa getting chased down the aisles off the stewards. I think is he talking about when Andy Cole scored or for Man United? I remember that black and white Santa used to make an appearance every Christmas. Hey, Hutch, maybe for one of the games this Christmas, we could get you black and white Santa outfit. And then if you get thrown out for being dressed as Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone, you can sneak back in as black and white Santa.
I'm pretty sure with digital ticketing, they would know who I was after I got thrown out for being Macaulay Culkin. So maybe black and white Santa first, and then Macaulay Culkin afterwards.
All right, yeah, true. Just wear glasses in one, then don't in the other. Best atmosphere
but then
ever?
I wouldn't be able to say.
What do you think best atmosphere ever, David?
I'm going to go with recency bias, and I'm going to say PSG. But
I was thinking that one.
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
That's a big thing, because I was at like Barcelona when we won the first Champions League game, Man United 5-0 and stuff, and a lot of my great memories. Maybe it's my time of life because, I've got my friends here, got my son there, but a lot of the things over recent years are up there, like PSG, like Brighton when we got in the Champions League.
I mean, I got my season ticket in just before Mike Ashley came in, and so really, like prior to like Eddie Howe coming in, and obviously like some great games. There was really, under Pardew, we got kind of like, we had a couple of decent seasons. Well, we had one season that was good. But other than that, it was like the championship. Like the games where we were playing in the championship. Who were we playing when Brighton were playing Villa?
Barnsley.
Yeah, that was decent. But it's
that was
not.
Great, yeah.
It wasn't anywhere near like. It wasn't anywhere near the highlights of like those nighttime games. There was that Man United game where I was working down in Leeds and I came back up, and again telling a story, but I didn't tell my wife that I was coming back up. And I basically just came back up for the match and then got caught.
Caught cheating on your wife with Johan Kabay.
Colaccini. And we won, didn't we? We won 3-0. Was it 3-0?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But which wasn't the commonplace occurrence it is these days back then. But I think, like, again, that question kind of like comes into the point. I think that so many of these have been in recent times that it's all just to the credit of the manager over the last few years. If we move into it, I'll tell you what, we'll just have a look through a few comments, but we've got to look at the present now and think about kind of what's happened this season. Things haven't been tremendous. What the future holds. Harpel says Eddie's been put in the Hall of Fame. He's got the keys to the city. He got that as well, didn't he? Freeman of the city.
Right.
Was that after we won the League Cup? Sometime anyway, but he definitely got that. He's going nowhere. And I certainly think that's true in the short term. But there's obviously, I think what we've got to see is that there's a limit, isn't there? There's a lot of credit in the bank, but when does that credit run out?
See, we've looked at those 4 seasons, right? And including this one, it's easy to see why people are annoyed, because like every single time we get into the Champions League, it does seem that we then have to take a step back because either the squad isn't right or the tactics aren't right, or there's basically just something not quite right with what we're doing, which creates these situations. Now, when he first came in, he basically had to go back to basics. We played like a really low block, and we basically just hit people on the break and played for played for those set pieces and won dirty, basically. We were quite a little dirty team. Then the second season, when we were quite good, well, we were very good. We played really physically. Like intensity was our identity, but that didn't work when we went into the Champions League, which is what caused all the injuries.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're going to talk about PSR in a minute, but I think a lot with everyone does love it. It's everyone's favorite conversation. But I do think that with a lot of people, it's because there's been so many false dawns. Like, when that first season was just fantastic. We've avoided relegation. Now we can push on. But then we pushed on beyond the point that we were ready for, and we got into the Champions League, and it kind of hampered us for the next season. And then obviously we had like that other run which got us into the Champions League, winning the cup, and everyone thought, right, well, that's going to be the kicking on point. Like Man City have had a crap season, Liverpool have been brilliant, but Arsenal still aren't there, and we've started the season so poorly that I think because that last season was so good, it is just another false dawn. But that kind of has to be slightly expected because of where we are with A, PSR, and B, because of how crap the summer was. Yeah, we signed some players, but we also had the massive runaround by larger clubs, which basically just took the mick out of us, taking players that we were interested in. And eventually we've had to go quite far down the list of strikers in order to actually get one that we were interested in, but it was more of an opportunity on the basis that Bayern were coughing at the price that Stuttgart were asking for. And he's not quite there. He's not quite ready to basically fit into our team, but we have no one else.
Well, he's scored, 6 goals. Let's not be harsh on the lad.
It's not that he's not a good striker. He's a brilliant striker. I think he is brilliant. The issue is that you kind of needed that full pre-season to build the squad around him. We haven't had that pre-season, and the last time Eddie Howe didn't have a pre-season like that was that first season where you had to basically go back to basics just to kind of get us to the end, and that is when we did well. And he's going to have to do something this time because he doesn't have the time to embed something complicated. So we either have to go.
You could see he's had the sort of season, couldn't you? But sorry, I'm just going to address Becca's comment there on the screen where she's picked up after your story of totaling your car en route back from Milan. So David's a speed demon. I would just to clarify, David is not a speed demon. He drives like what I would say is probably if you got a cat drunk and put it in charge of a dodgem or a milk float more like, then it's a little bit like that. Put it this way, if you're in the car with him, you've got to be one of the wing mirrors. Sorry, Dave. I've took your point with you there.
You also lie. You lie, sir. You liar. Anyway, yeah.
I'll tell you what. You've kind of set us up a little bit here for.
Go on, talk about PSR.
Right, please, people, still listen. I'm going to talk about PSR, right? Because I've brought a graphic up, but don't worry about it too much. It's basically how PSR works. Is you have a 3-year calculation on your revenue, and you are allowed to make £105 million loss on top of that. So basically, you've got all the money you make plus £105 million over 3 years. And the thing I think that Eddie Howe has done that a lot of people don't appreciate is he's completely overtaken the odds here. If you have a look at this, so over this last 3 years, Man City's total revenue plus 105 million is 2.14 billion. Man United's is 2.08 billion. Liverpool's 1.94 billion, Arsenal 1.81 billion, Tottenham 1.71 billion, Chelsea 1.56 billion, Newcastle United 855 million. Now, I'll be honest, if I had 855 million quid, I'd be quite happy, but I am not a football club that proclaims to be challenging the elite. Realistically, Chelsea are the closest to us from all those teams. Theoretically, they've got an extra 700 million quid than us each summer. Now, the way PSR works is that calculation, you get all that money and you report each year what you've spent. The money that you spend on the infrastructure, like your stadium, the money you spend on your women's team and your kids' team does not count. The only money that counts for PSR purposes is money you spend on players and staff in terms of transfer fees and wages. So when you see that, like, next year's accounts here, like Manchester City have made 800 million, but they've spent 400 million. If they've spent 200 million of that on the ground, they've still got 500 million to spend. So these clubs have got vast resources compared to us. If you look, like, some of them have got double. I mean, Tottenham have got double ours, and Tottenham aren't that much further ahead than us. Man City and Man United have got 2.5 times what we've got each summer. And a lot of that money's tied up in longer contracts for, players that Man United have wasted money on, like Anthony and Højlund and stuff like that. But they've had that money to waste and they've been able to make those mistakes. We spoke earlier about how Matt Targett was maybe a misstep. But if you just say jury's out on everybody who you may be unsure of who's bought this summer, I don't think there's been another misstep. I don't think you could even say like Asula was a misstep, or Kelly, who we made a huge profit on. Asula's done well for a meagre outlay. We've made a success out of everyone we've signed under this regime. And Eddie Howe has finished above at least one of those in every one of his full seasons at Newcastle United. Twice, he's beaten a number of them to Champions League places, and once we've won a cup whereby we won 4 games against teams on that list. And that's the thing, that's the difference maker for me, because PSR puts such a big, strong light on how far behind we are. If we were to lose Howe, or if we were to sack him, the new man is going to have the same problem. But Hutch, who would you have if Eddie Howe, if we were to part with him? Who, and throw it in the comments who anybody would have, because whoever it is, he's having the same problem.
See, it depends what you mean by who would you have, because if you sacked
It's
Eddie
not a
Howe,
cryptic question, David. Who
it
would
is
you have as the replacement manager?
But it's a complicated question, Jamie, because it implies one of two things. It implies either that Eddie Howe will leave this summer, which means that the opportunities of signing someone like Areola would be much higher, and I'd probably put my money in that basket. However, if you were to sack him now, which is what some people say, you're never going to be able to get him out of his contract. So therefore, you've got to look at either a short-term option for a manager, or you're going to have to look at someone who's not in that same category, that same level. And as a consequence of that, this is part of the reason why I just don't understand these how people, because who are you going to get who's going to do a better job? Like, if I asked you, who would you get if you were to sack him right now? Who would it be?
Honestly, I agree completely with your point that a mid-season move leaves you quite desperate, and we do have a little comparison for that as well. But I think at the very, very least, he deserves this season, both in terms of his achievements. He deserves the chance to turn it around with Wissa in the team, with Livramento, with Hall back in, and in terms of the credit he's got in the bank for what he's done in the past. I think this time last season we had that game at Brentford mid-December when we were 12th, 13th, 14th. Now, I don't think there was as bad performances last year as we've had it like Brentford and West Ham. I think the games we were losing last year were more not acceptable because there was some shocking performances, but more understandable maybe. But we had that.
There was a couple. I mean, there were a couple of games early in that season where I distinctly remember walking away thinking, that was awful. Like, and you know, but this is football, isn't it? It's you sometimes get these games. You sometimes get these runs. It's how you react to it, and it is very much a. Wazza says there is only one, and that's Klopp, but Eddie stays. Do you reckon that Klopp would take the job? I don't necessarily think that he would.
I don't think he would, but I think Klopp's a sensible shout in that he took over a sort of Midland Liverpool team, and he's a manager that can say, right, I'm going to keep you and get the best out of you. I'm going to sign this bloke for 60 million and turn him into a £100 million player, which is what Howe's done. He's kept he's turned double Isaac's price. You'd probably say the same if we were to sell Bruno or Tonali now. And then the panhandling he's done with the old squad, similar in a way to what Klopp did at Liverpool. He's taken players. I saw a team from like 2019 or something, and Jacob Murphy and Fabian Schär were in it, and it was a bit like, you know, when you see clips of a Hollywood star who's made an appearance in The Bill when he's a young actor, and it's you get like a picture and there's some pure superstar getting thrown about in the cells in The Bill, and that's what it was like seeing Schär and Murphy in that team, you know,
on a trolley and casually.
And you wouldn't have picked them as being part of a Champions League team, and now but how managed to get the best out of them? The whole Joe Linton thing, all right, maybe that was partly fortunate, but what a player he's turned him into. And even those that have like done a job and moved on, like Longstaff, Almiron, Dubravka, you know, that like everybody, he got the best out of them, and he could turn those players around. And a lot of your elite managers, elite in inverted commas, just use the checkbook a lot. I mean, Guardiola, I think, is an amazing manager, but he's never had to manage without unlimited spending that he could do at Barca, at Bayern, Man City.
I do think, right, and I heard this on Paul on the Time. I kind of like, I agreed with that. I agree with what they said, but I think I'm pretty sure I said this to you, that should have been, that season should have been like, you know, basically the last stand, the final throw of the dice for some of these players. And I remember specifically going to the first one and thinking that some of these players wouldn't get the opportunity to go again in that cup final. And then when they did, I was thinking, yeah, that's amazing that these guys have won it, but now it's time to update this squad. And yeah, we're basically in a position, primarily because of PSR, but also because of like the backroom ups and downs that Newcastle has had over the past few years, that we're still basically playing some of the players that I don't think, I kind of think we're showing their age a bit towards the end of last season, and now are very much showing that they don't really belong in this squad. I mean, in fact, you know, I keep harping on about it, but I remember going to Celtic with you and Martin at the beginning of this season and seeing that Nick Pope performance and thinking, Jesus Christ, if he's starting in nets for us, because at the time we were linked with James Trafford from and we were kind of like, I mean, we were basically thinking, oh, thank God he's coming in, because if he starts, we're knackered. And here we are, and he's still in goal for us.
He's had some good moments, I think, Nick Pope, this season. He's had a lot of crap thrown his way the last couple of weeks, but
Where he was
I think it's
responsible.
time.
He's
I
been
think it's time
responsible as
Ramsdale
well.
got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. Time to it feels like we're getting towards time for some of them, and maybe where the injuries have happened, you wouldn't have given Trippier so many games. You certainly wouldn't be playing Burn at left back.
The Bernal left back situation was just weird because if you remember, we actually played that same fullback position like a couple of seasons ago. And what I really don't understand is why Byrne thinks he's a wing back. Because when we were playing, we played Trippier as a roaming wing back, and Byrne would kind of fit into a back three, which made it more solid. And yet, almost like to win the headers, he's going up initially, but then he's not dropping back. He thinks he can play up there.
I think the thing is with that, it has been said he's played really well at centre half last season. He's not a left back. Lewis Hall's back, and hopefully that's it. I think you get a situation where, if you had one game and a couple of injuries, you'd say, well, we can get by with Dan Burn in his left back, but you don't want him there for any length of time, do you? But the overarching point is you've got these guys who have been brilliant, and it'll be hard to see some of them go. Seeing like Callum Wilson going, it was at the time was right, but someone who's been brilliant for us, St. Maximin even, Dubravka. It's you think you've been tremendous player for us, and you're gonna get more and more in that over the years, over the very imminent years, I think. But so basically, it sounds a bit like you're saying you think this might be a bit of a transitional season. Is that one fair?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll go back to the whole point of the false dawns thing, where I do think we are tending to do very well in some seasons where things kind of go right for us, but then as a consequence of things going right one season, they tend to fall into place where they don't go right the next.
You might have said this a year ago, though, mightn't you, as well?
Yeah, but again, is Eddie Howe a victim of his own success by getting us into the Champions League too early, effectively that first season? And now we've kind of we all want it. We all want those European nights. We all want to travel away. I would say that, yeah, we do need the rebuild. We needed a rebuild this summer and we didn't get it. And that is probably because of PSR. And when we actually sold Isaac, there wasn't the time to actually properly invest in the squad. And so as a consequence, we ended up probably paying far too much for Ramsey and then getting Big Nick as a replacement. But then we probably would have been doing better. We would have been doing a lot better had Wissa not got injured. So things have just fallen into place where it has just been a ridiculously unlucky start to the season, if you will. And I don't necessarily think that you can blame Eddie Howe for the situation over the summer, and B, look.
That's the thing. I think you're right there, because the next chapter has got to be how far can he turn this team around with Wissa, who should be back. Don't know if he'll start on Saturday, but I believe he'll be in the squad. Hall, who will start, and Livramento, who won't be far off. But having those three in, having the attacking wing backs, and crucially, having the striker that they're all used to playing with, the guy who'll be in the 6-yard box. That's the first thing. Can they adapt to that? Especially given the fact that they've had this 2-week international break with a chance to reset with the players who are there. If he can do that and it starts turning around, I think any doubts will be swiftly forgotten. There's a big game on the horizon, though, because we've got, I think, about 6 or 7 games, and then we go to Sunderland. And I think if they play like they did at West Ham and Brentford at Sunderland, and they're still 14th in the league, especially if, the Champions League has tailed a little bit as well with 2 potentially awkward away games, I think you'll get a big turn there. Big part of the reason Pardew lost the crowd was because he could not beat Sunderland. He kept turning in those awful performances. And I know it's completely different comparing maybe what Pardew did over a season with what Howe's delivered over 4. But I think that could be a bit of a Waterloo in a way. If, you know, some people might go in a different direction. But I would hope there's every chance that can be turned around before then. If we get a few results, beat Sunderland, and a few days later celebrate by going past Fulham into the semi-finals of the Carabao again, I think people will pretty soon forget about this little run.
Well, you know, we do call ourselves a NUFC comparison, and I would just like to point out that Jamie, if you guys aren't aware, does write for the Mag, and recently you wrote an article in the Mag comparing Eddie Howe's trials and tribulations with Alex Ferguson's trials and tribulations in his 4th season as Manchester United manager. And the Manchester United fans, although they don't like to admit it, turned on Alex Ferguson. And unlike the modern day where you go on X or your social media site and tell the world under a false identity exactly how you feel, back in the day it was bed sheets that they used to hang up in the stands, and the bed sheet read, if I can just find it, 3 years of excuses and it's still crap. Tara Fergie.
Yeah. And
now, he went on to win the FA Cup that season, and in the subsequent seasons became the English Premier League's most recognisable figure, became Sir Alex Ferguson.
No, hang on. Gunnosaurus.
in the days pre-Arsenal TV. It's time to go.
But like, what happened was he built a dynasty, didn't he? And you, like, the point I've made in that article that you very kindly reference is that Howe's kind of doing the same thing where the whole club's in his ethos. And Ferguson, it took him time to get there, but once he did, it was like you could, going back to what you said, you could get rid of the old players. You could get rid of Gary Pallister and Brian Robson and stuff, because the new players coming in fit Fergie's system. He was the man, and it just kept working. That team kept just regenerating itself, and you were thinking, brilliant, such and such. Cantona's left, that's Man United screwed. Nah, a couple of years later, they win the European Cup. I'm not saying that could be us, because, again, we've got to go back to those 3 letters, which Ferguson didn't have to put up with. PSR,
but then,
factor for us. But
one of my criticisms of Eddie Howe, though, is that what Alex Ferguson did do was give youth a chance. I mean, he basically built a title-winning, in fact, the Champions League-winning team around kids that he'd brought through. And yeah, fair enough, he added to it, spent lots of money adding to it, but he did give youth a chance. And, you know, one of the big questions for me has been during this little spell where, you know, Dan Burn has been at left back and everyone's kind of like baffled by the whole situation, is where's Alex Murphy been? Bearing in mind
I mean, I think we're probably starting from a pretty low bar on that, because our youth policy has not delivered for a lot of years, and I think part of the whole club rebuild is redoing it. But you're right, there's not really been anybody emerged by Lewis Miley in the last few years, has there? So
Sean Neve has potential, but we'll see.
Yeah. And like, it might be that it just takes a little bit longer, or it may be that I think it's something that's often been said. And something that's often been said is that about the youth not getting so much of a chance. But whether that's an absolute feeling or whether it's just something that needs a bit of time, I don't know.
Was there saying that Jamie can read and write, so definitely not a West Ender? That's a bit harsh on the West Enders.
Yeah. Well, I can't. Yeah, read me in the mag on whenever you can get me out the pub for long enough to write something. But yeah, I can do both of those things and many others. But
Of
we
course,
did touch
you
on the
haven't read it yet.
comparison thing. What?
Nothing.
You did touch on the comparison thing. There is just one more thing that I did want to quickly bring up before we kind of draw. I've got another funky new graphic here, which is the Premier League table from, let me get it right in my head, 2003 to 2004. There's some right names in there. Who would have thought that Charlton Athletic comes seventh? Now, this is Bobby Robson's last full season as Newcastle manager, right? And for anyone who, it's probably quite difficult to read, but if you can see that, the away record there from your 19 games, 2 wins. 2 wins away from home. Away form's been a massive problem, Hutch. Those two, I can tell you who those were against. They were against Fulham and Middlesbrough. I was at the Middlesbrough one. And they lost 5 and drew 12. So a lot of draws that maybe sort of made it a little bit easier. And they managed to sneak into 5th place with 56 points. I'm going to say 56 points will get you nowhere near 5th place these days. But the big question that this brought was, should Bobby Robson have gone when he did? Because the next season, he lost the first 4 games and then he was sacked. There were 2 schools of thought. Number 1, he should never have been sacked. And he should have been given that full season because Graham Souness came in and wrecked everything. Number 2, should they have done what you kind of hinted at before and moved him upstairs or relieved him of his role at the start of the summer and rebuilt across a full summer when you have a full availability of managers and things, and got a better start in the new season, because really things fell apart there, and it wasn't until Edward John Frank Howe walked into town that we got back in the Champions League some 22 years later.
I think with the PIF being who they are, they will very much look at it like from a project point of view, and they will give Howe time unless there is a serious possibility that we could get relegated. And they'll review it towards the summer. And if the season has been poor by their standards, then he will go. If not, then he will stay. Unless, of course, Tuchel is absolutely terrible at the World Cup and England come knocking and he decides to leave.
That's a very real possibility, I think. That if things aren't great here and England presents itself as an opportunity, and I think it could, regardless of how Tuchel does at the World Cup, Hutch, because they've qualified well. I don't think European teams tend to do that well in the hot weather, although Germany won it in Brazil.
Yeah.
But it's scorching in it at the times they're playing this World Cup. And but regardless, England could win it and he could say, right, that's it, job done, I'm off now. And Howe might think, I can take the England job. It kind of gets us away from the restrictions of Newcastle and gives us a few years of what is a fairly easy job compared to the hours he puts in here. But I don't know. But the point is, I think you've got to either you've got to give him time, but then if you are going to make that decision, it's got to be in the summer. I think he deserves at least this season. Was I saying I've just opened Freddie Shepherd's regret? Well, wonder what that is. What's Freddie Shepherd's regret, Hutch?
Well, the implication is the implication. Yeah, I'm glad you caught up there, mate.
Yeah, getting rid of Bobby when he did, because I mean, it might not have worked out so well that season, but like we say, we ended up 14th or something with Souness, which is, look how far we've come since then. What position are we in the league? But and Bobby refused to go upstairs apparently, but they might have mentioned it to him. But I think that's it. You either give him that season or you sack him in the summer and just say, right, see who else is available. I used to always say it in a sort of Marvel multiverse sense. This was the only universe where Newcastle hadn't won anything, the one that we were living in until last March, because there was so many near misses happened. We're coming into time a little bit now. I think we both agree, Hutch, there's people who want Howe out, but we both agree he deserves the season, don't we?
I would like to see him have the season. I really don't think that it's going to get much worse. I mean, I know we've got Man City this weekend. We could discuss Erling Haaland being back to peak Haaland goal scoring form, but
yeah, he's all right, isn't he? I think it's weird because that's maybe part of the problem this season as well, because you see that game on Saturday, you've just kind of got to dismiss it, whatever happens, haven't you? If we lose, as long as they play all right, as long as they don't disgrace themselves, if they lose, you've just got to say, well, they're an expensively assembled super team with a cyborg up front. If we win, you say, wow, that's an amazing result. They've played amongst themselves, but we've got to go to Everton and turn the away form around.
Yeah.
And if it's a draw, it's a draw. And you've kind of got to not put too much in it. And then when we get to the next games, to Everton, that's when you can seriously start saying, right, we want to see things looking better. But we've fallen further behind to the point that you go to Man City thinking we kind of need something, to arrest the slide. We could be in the relegation zone, I think, if things go very badly at the weekend.
I mean, you go back to that first season though, in under Howe, it was very much a case of, it didn't really I know we beat. Was it Burnley that we beat? But then we had that horrible period over Christmas where we basically played every single team who was in the top four. But it wasn't basically until we had that away win over Leeds and maybe Everton that, whichever game it is going to be, one win might basically just turn it around, and they might just basically figure out a simple system which will enable us to basically climb up the table. And that's basically all you need. You just need that one win that's going to break up this snowball that's currently hurtling down.
I think so. And ideally that'll come at Everton and the snowball will be in full effect by the time we get the Stadium of Light. I'm just hearing from Clive, our producer in my ear here, that Erling Haaland has got 1 goal in 6 games against Newcastle, which was in the 3-3 draw, I think, a few years ago, which was another brilliant game. So we all know what's going to happen on Saturday then, don't we? Perhaps, does Dan Burn normally mark him and he's not available?
Last year, I'm pretty sure it was Dan Burn, but the year before it was Botman, and Botman absolutely bossed him. But that was Botman pre all his injury issues, and he's not as
maybe
quick.
This is where it all comes together then. Not only are we back, Botman's back, Howe's back, away wins are back. That's our prediction for the next couple of weeks, isn't it?
That's our hope, not necessarily a prediction. It's not a prediction, it's a guarantee. What? No.
Just jumping on this one, Ashton 1779 saying, just noticed the Toon released a 45-minute video a day in the life of Bruno, which I have not watched, but I've seen a couple of clips on there. And I think Bruno is somebody who just, when we see Eddie Howe doing it for the City and Newcastle and stuff, that's someone who just gets it, isn't it, Bruno? And you can see how much he loves being here and loves this place. And talk about a statue for Howe someday. I think the statue of that man will have to be right next to him. He's been hit and miss at times this season, but he's turned into a real leader. So now I've said that, that's Haaland to score and Bruno to get sent off on Saturday. I'm away to see what that'll give you on in that guy, right?
However, almost guaranteed that he will lose the toss. So,
does he still do that? I don't know if he does so much. I don't know. I'm too busy shaking my head at that bad version of Bleeding Races that they're playing before each game to notice the toss. But Anyway, we will catch up with a Newcastle comparison between that Man City game and whatever games have happened in the past, Hutch, that pique our fancy, eh? So we'll be doing that next week. Someone said, on a positive note, we have great chins, lads. Yeah,
Strong chins.
But well, maybe we'll have to take that prediction on the chin if it doesn't come in at the weekend. But and the weekend after for Everton. So we'll be back with a comparison on Man City and stuff in the past. In the meantime, if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe us here at NUFC Talk TV. If you are on a podcast, subscribe to us. We'll be back even when things go really, really bad. In fact, there was a Hutch's favourite time. And it'll be thick and fast because it's 2 games a week for Newcastle United from now until pretty much Kingdom Come. So plenty to talk about and plenty to moan about, Hutch, because you'll find something even if we're winning, won't you?
I probably will, yeah.
So, thanks for listening, everybody. We're about that time now, so we are about to sign off for the night. Thank you, Hutch, for tolerating my slightly negative attitude towards you at times.
Long time.
And thank you all for listening. See you next time.
Peace out.